I used to think marriage made you fluent in another person, like learning a language until you could predict the next word before it left their lips. For 5 years, I believed I spoke Isabella's language. The way she twirled her hair when she was nervous, how she bit the inside of her cheek just before telling a white lie about running late, the sleepy hum she made when she curled into me on the couch after a long shift. And then, one Sunday morning, my wife handed me a cup of tea that she said would help her headache, turned off her phone, and slipped into the guest room without saying goodnight. In that small, domestic silence, every word I thought I knew went missing. My name is Carlos. I'm 34, a shift supervisor at Haller Design in Phoenix, machined parts, tight tolerances, production schedules that make or break contracts. I like things that fit, numbers that add up, systems that tell the truth no matter who's staring at the printout. For 3 months straight, the system at home stopped making sense. Not tonight, Carlos. I have a headache. The first time she said it, I smiled, kissed her forehead, and told her to rest. The second time, I brought her water and rubbed her temples while she scrolled through her phone with the screen tilted away from me. The 12th time, she pulled her hand back when my fingers brushed her stomach, flinched like I'd asked for money instead of a kiss, and added a new sentence to the script. Work has me exhausted. I'm sorry. Isabella works the front desk at Glenfield Electric. Answer phones. Schedule estimates. File purchase orders. She's been there 2 years. We have the kind of budget where unexpected car repairs mean we eat cheap for 2 weeks, and the kind of neighborhood where you wave to the same dog walkers at 6:15 every morning. Nothing in our life asked for secrecy. Yet there it was silence where answers should be. I stood in our bedroom doorway one Friday night and watched her brush her hair at the vanity. She avoided my eyes in the mirror. The woman I married used to tug me close the minute I stepped through the door. Now she angled her body like a barricade. "ISA," I said softly. "We need to talk about this." "About what?" The brush clacked against the glass as she set it down. Her hand trembled, then stilled. "About us. About what's happening here." Something flashed across her face, fear or guilt. It was gone too quickly to name. She forced a smile I'd never seen before, all front teeth and no warmth. "Nothing's happening, Carlos. I'm just tired from work." 3 months tired? I made an appointment with Dr. Martinez next week. That answer came too quickly, like it had been rehearsed. "Maybe I need vitamins." I nodded. "Okay." My voice sounded calm, even the way it does when a contractor calls and says he needs the impossible by Thursday, and I have to convince him we can deliver. Inside me, a small, cold gear clicked into place. The next morning, I caught her in the bathroom at 6 a.m., bent over the toilet. She didn't hear me step onto the tile. "Elena." I used the nickname that felt soft in my mouth, the one that used to make her smile. She jerked upright, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. "Carlos, you scared me. Are you sick?" "Something I ate." She grabbed a hand towel like it could erase the moment. "That Chinese place must have been bad. We ate the same thing. Maybe mine. I don't know. I have to be early today." She brushed past me already dressed for work, blouse crisp, skirt I'd never seen. "Big client meeting." Glenfield Electric does residential service calls and commercial maintenance. The receptionist doesn't have client meetings. When she left, I stood in the kitchen with the mug she'd bought me for our 3rd anniversary, world's best husband in peeling navy ink, and tried to swallow coffee around the lump in my throat. I have a simple rule at the plant: don't accuse, verify. You can think a mill is off, but until the dial indicator shows it, you're guessing. I needed a reading. I needed proof. We met 6 years ago at my cousin Miguel's wedding. She was standing near the dessert table, laughing at something my aunt had said. When she laughed, she lit from within, like a lamp turned up. Back then, she was finishing her business degree and working part-time. I was 29, already the dependable guy at Haller Design who could run second shift without the plant manager popping in. We did it the old-fashioned way, long drives to Sedona when we had gas money, 2-for-1 pizzas when we didn't, park benches, and cheap coffee. She said she loved that I could fix anything. I said I loved that she kept the light on when I rolled in late smelling like coolant. We married in a small ceremony at St. Augustine, roses from her mother's yard in mason jars down the aisle. We bought a 60-year-old ranch on Maple Street, stucco that cracked one summer, and I patched myself, a backyard big enough for a garden shed I built for her. She planted roses and staked them carefully, cooing at any green bud like it could hear her. We talked about kids, not yet, but someday. Let me get my footing at work first, she'd said. I want to be ready. I agreed. Time felt like a big, generous thing then, like we could take as much as we wanted and it would never run out. This year, time started slipping through my fingers. She stopped asking about my day, stopped sliding notes into my lunchbox the way she used to drink water, dummy scrawled next to a heart. She started working late Tuesdays and Thursdays, then added Wednesdays and random Fridays. When I suggested dinner at Romano's, she said she wasn't in the mood for heavy food. When I bought Diamondbacks tickets, she remembered a sudden training. When my sister Victoria invited us for Sunday pozole, Isabella had plans with her college friend Sophia. Intimacy faded like a song playing on a car radio as the signal drops, then it was just static. The night she came home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine, I told myself to be rational. Elevator broke, she said, slipping off her shoes without looking at me. Had to share a ride with David. David from accounting? I asked, because that's the only David she had ever mentioned. No, David from the warehouse. Glenfield doesn't have a warehouse. She blinked and recovered too fast. I meant the storage unit. You know what I meant. I did. I knew exactly what she meant. The story had holes because it wasn't true. She started sleeping like a stranger, deep and noiseless, no little snore at 3 a.m., no sleep-mumbled words I used to tease her about. Her phone became a new organ, attached to her hand. She never left it face up anymore. The truth arrived on a piece of thermal paper. I was hunting for the refrigerator warranty in our filing cabinet when my fingers brushed a folded receipt tucked deep behind a stack of policy documents. Planned Parenthood Phoenix. Pregnancy test and consultation. Positive result, initialed in looping handwriting. The date stamped the bottom, 6 weeks earlier. That was the week the vomiting started. The week the headaches began. The week she recoiled from my touch. We hadn't been intimate in 3 months. I sat on the edge of our bed with that slip of paper between my thumb and forefinger like it might burn me. The house felt too quiet. Outside, a lawnmower droned 3 houses down, a sound so normal it made everything else feel unreal. My wife was pregnant. The baby wasn't mine. I didn't shout. I didn't slam doors. I placed the receipt exactly where I found it and closed the drawer. When she came home that night with takeout and a brittle version of her smile, we watched a movie, and I pretended nothing had shifted, even though gravity itself felt different. She nestled against my shoulder halfway through the film. "How was your day?" "Fine," I said. "Dr. Martinez wants to run some tests next week," she murmured. "Just routine." "Uh-huh." I kept my face smooth. Inside, I was building something, step by step, like a jig on the line. Patience is a tensile thing. It looks thin until you feel how much weight it holds. At the plant, when a line starts drifting out of spec, you don't tear it down in a panic. You measure again, you log it, you gather data until the problem has a shape. I decided to give Isabella's lies a shape. The next morning, I started a notebook, just dates and times at first. Tuesday, claimed late because of inventory. Thursday, home 11:15 p.m., smelled like sandalwood and a citrus I couldn't name. Sunday, took phone call on the porch, lowered voice when I walked by. 2 weeks later, I met with Patricia Hoffman, a family attorney with half-moon glasses and the no-nonsense patience of someone who's heard every version of my story. "Do you want to save the marriage?" she asked after I laid out the symptoms without diagnosis. Distance, lies, and a receipt that felt like a verdict. "I want the truth," I said. "Then I'll decide." "Good." She slid a brochure across the desk. Non-invasive prenatal paternity testing is possible as early as 9 weeks. Or you can wait until birth. Either way, don't tip your hand. And start protecting yourself now. Open an individual account, document finances, gather proof. quietly. I can do quiet. She believed me. In the parking lot, my hands finally shook. I stared at the dashboard until the tremor passed, then drove to Central Avenue and sat in the public library for an hour reading everything I could about prenatal testing, lawful surveillance, Arizona divorce statutes. Facts studied me the way a dial indicator's needle does when it settles exactly where it should. At home, Isabella had made stew, my favorite, with little squares of potato and cilantro that clung to the spoon. She touched my arm, let her hand stay there a beat longer than usual, tested whether I'd lean in. I did. Believe it or not, I still loved the person I thought she was. That made what I had to do feel less like revenge and more like survival. On the third Friday after the receipt, she texted me at 4:41 p.m., late tonight, big project. Don't wait up. Red heart at 5:12. I hired a private investigator named Robert Kane who specialized in infidelity. He had a dry, cup's humor and eyes that missed nothing. You want confirmation, he said. I want evidence, I answered. Photos, names, times, addresses. He studied me. You're calm. I run production. If I lose my temper every time a part warps, nothing gets made. He chuckled. Fair enough. He had me sign paperwork that would make anything he gathered admissible if needed. He outlined what he'd do, GPS tracker on her vehicle with my consent as the registered co-owner, visual surveillance the nights she claimed to be at work, background checks on any man she met. You sure you want to know? He asked, the question that's practically a script in his line of work. Yes. 3 nights later, he had our first hit. He texted me a photo of Isabella's car parked outside a tan stucco house in Tempe, elm trees in the small front yard. 7:38 p.m. 15 minutes later, another photo, Isabella on the porch, letting a tall man pull her into a kiss. He wore a red ball cap and a t-shirt stretched tight over his shoulders. The porch light haloed their faces. Robert's message followed, same guy as earlier. Name likely James Rodriguez. Red Chevy pickup in driveway, plate, 6XX. I zoomed until the plate settled into legible numbers and felt something inside me harden the way a quenched part does when it hits oil and stops being soft metal. The next day, Robert handed me a manila folder in the parking lot of a grocery store 2 miles from my house, so the handoff wouldn't feel loaded with ceremony. Inside, printed photos, a full background report on James Rodriguez, 36, contractor with Morrison Construction until 6 weeks ago, behind on a mortgage, one prior relationship that resulted in a child support order in Flagstaff, currently in arrears, 2 police call logs to his address for domestic disturbance that hadn't resulted in charges. None of it surprised me. All of it enraged me in a slow, contained way that made me more precise. I didn't confront Isabella. I added the folder to my growing file, finances, timelines, receipts. I changed passwords on our joint accounts, opened a checking account in my name only, diverted direct deposit for the overtime I'd been racking up because Haller Design's big client pushed a rush order. I wasn't going to get blindsided twice. The following Saturday, Isabella made pancakes, blueberries, even, which she knows I love. She hummed a little under her breath while she flipped them. She hadn't hummed in months. Carlos, she said, setting a plate in front of me, I have something to tell you. I put down my fork slowly, like the moment had a shape I needed to see. What's up? She reached across the table, took my hand, and squeezed so tight my knuckles pressed white. We're going to have a baby. I looked up. Let surprise wash across my face like it had just struck me. Are you serious? I took a test yesterday. Her eyes filled. She smiled and the smile trembled. We're pregnant, Carlos. We did it. You did it, I thought. You and James. I stood, came around the table, wrapped my arms around her, and kissed her hair. This is amazing, ISA. I let my voice break. We should celebrate tonight. Romanos. Her grip loosened. For a moment, fear darted through her eyes. Then she nodded. Yes, Romanos. I reserved the booth where we'd sat the night we got engaged, the one with a scuff on the wall that looks like a leaning heart. I ordered her favorite, chicken parm, and pretended to fuss over whether I should get lasagna or gnocchi. She smiled the whole time, like a woman telling herself the bad part is over and only good parts remain. When the plates were down and the server had refilled our waters, I set a second envelope on the table. "What's that?" she asked, still smiling. "A little something for us," I said. She slid a fingernail under the flap, opened it, and the smile died like someone blew out a candle. Photos spilled, her kissing James on his porch, her car outside his house on Elm Street, their shadows tangled through a window. Then the Planned Parenthood receipt. Then the background report. Then the draft divorce petition with Patricia Hoffman's letterhead. At the bottom, a consent form for a non-invasive prenatal paternity test, her name left blank. Carlos, her voice was a gulp. The restaurant noise softened to a hum around us. "I know," I said. "I've known for weeks." Her mouth opened and closed. I can explain. Explain how you got pregnant during the 3 months we weren't intimate? Explain why your work meetings happen at a house in Tempe? Explain why you planned to tell me at dinner where I proposed, like it would cast a blessing on a lie." Tears blurred her eyeliner. You didn't mean to get caught," I said. I slid the envelope back toward me and tucked everything in. "On Monday, you'll be served. My attorney will also be contacting James Rodriguez and his ex in Flagstaff, in case she wants to know where her child support is going." "Don't," she whispered. "Carlos, please." "We can know," I said, standing. "We can't." Outside, night had settled over Phoenix in a warm blanket. The neon sign at Romano's buzzed faintly. Isabella made it to the parking lot before she broke, sobbing into her hands next to her car like a girl at a prom who just heard the worst news of her life. I leaned against my truck for a full minute, wanting to feel sorry enough to go back, but all I felt was a grief so clean it stung. "I never meant for this to happen," she said finally, voice ragged. "Which part?" I asked. "The affair, the pregnancy, or the part where you were going to put your hand on your stomach in front of my mother at Sunday dinner and let me tell everyone I was going to be a dad?" She flinched as if I'd struck her. I thought we could make it work. You thought I'd never find out." There was no heat in my voice, just exhaustion. "You thought I was stupid." "No," she said quickly. "I thought I was smarter." There it was, truth with its mask off. I nodded once and drove away. On Monday, a process server delivered the petition to our front door just as she was leaving for work. She called me from the driveway, voice small. "You really did it." "Yes." "What am I supposed to do?" she asked. "Pack," I said. "Your things will be in the living room. I'll be home at 4. Your sister can help you. I'll be out." I took a long lunch break and cleared half her closet into boxes. I didn't touch the framed photos. I left our wedding album on the shelf. That wasn't about mercy, it was about memory. I wanted a record of what I'd believed in, not a pile of glass to sweep up. I set her clothes and shoes and a basket of lotions on the carpet near the front door. When I got home at 4, a small white car sat at the curb. Her sister Patricia stood on the porch with her arms crossed, jaw clenched. "This is cruel," Patricia said. "You could at least let her explain." "She had 3 months to explain," I said. She chose to lie. Isabella walked past me with a box. She didn't look up. I watched her carry out the life we'd made in 4 trips. The last thing she took was the mug, "World's Best Husband." She set it on the edge of a box, looked at it for a long time, then put it back on the counter and walked out. When they drove away, the house exhaled. The silence that followed wasn't the bad kind. It was the kind you get after the machines stop and all you hear is yourself breathing. Word travels weirdly fast in a big family. My mother called first. "Carlos," she said, no preamble, "what happened?" "She cheated," I said. A shaky exhale came through the phone. "With who?" "A guy named James Rodriguez." "There's more." "She's pregnant." Silence, like someone pressed a mute button. Then, "Come to dinner. Tonight." I made caldo. "Your father's asking 1,000 questions I can't answer." At their kitchen table, with steam fogging my glasses, I told them as much as a son can tell his parents about the end of his marriage. My father's mouth set in the hard line he only uses when a tool breaks and smashes his thumb. My mother put her hand over mine and patted, the way she did when I was 10, and scraped both knees and wanted to cry and be brave at the same time. "You did right," she said. "You were gentle, and you were strong. That's all you can be." My sister texted from her corner of the couch across town, "I'm proud of you. Come by this week. I'll make you laugh until you forget she exists." At work, the guys on second shift noticed the new weight in my eyes. Diego, who runs our largest CNC mill, came into my office and shut the door with the careful quiet of a good friend. "She cheated?" he asked. "Yeah." He swore softly in Spanish and shook his head. "We're here," he said. "Whatever you need." What I needed was something to do with my hands. I took overtime. I adjusted coolant flow rates until they sang. I helped Luis tune a finicky spindle, then stayed to run the first pieces so he could go pick up his kid from school. The work hummed through me. At lunch, the guys made sure I ate. They told stupid jokes. They told good ones. I breathed. Isabella tried 4 times to call in the first week. I let each one go to voicemail. On the 5th day, she sent a text, "We need to talk. Please." I ignored it. On the 7th, another, "I'm sorry. Can we meet?" I typed and erased 3 replies and sent none. On the 10th day, I met Robert Kane for coffee so he could hand me one more envelope, copies of 2 threads I'd asked him to dig up. James Rodriguez's missed child support notices and a set of emails from him to a foreman at Morrison Construction in which James made the kind of threats that get you escorted off a job site. I didn't want to weaponize them. I wanted context. I wanted truth to be a steady surface I could stand on. "You're not going to blackmail them?" Robert asked, not quite a question, not quite a warning. "No," I said. "I'm going to protect myself. The rest is gravity." He nodded. Gravity always wins. 2 weeks later, Isabella announced she was going to visit her sister Elena in Tucson. Elena doesn't exist. Isabella has one sister, Patricia, and she lives in Sacramento. "I'll come home Sunday night," she said, tucking hair behind her ear the way she always does when the lie feels heavier than she can carry. "Drive safe," I said. I followed her at a distance that would have made a detective proud if I'd been one. She took the 202 to Tempe, turned onto a quiet street, and parked in front of the same tan stucco house Robert had shown me. James Rodriguez walked out, kissed her in the driveway like the world owed him a parade, and led her inside with his hand on the low part of her back that used to be mine. I took photos from across the street and left before I had to watch anything else. Monday morning, I saw him at a coffee shop on University Drive, 2 people behind me in line. He smelled like the same cologne Isabella had worn on her sweater. He told the barista he needed an extra shot, told his friend on the phone that she told her husband she wants to start trying. My vision tunneled for a second. The coffee in my hand tasted like hot water. I threw it away on my way out the door and sat in my truck breathing until the tunnel widened again. I told Patricia Hoffman everything. "We can file," she said. "We can also petition the court to order a prenatal paternity test if she stonewalls." "She won't," I said. "She wants me to be the father. She wants the lie to be clean. Then we wait." Patricia's voice softened. "And we prepare." Preparation looked like moving my savings, inventorying our things, changing passwords, and making a list of every item I wanted to keep if it came to splitting the house. The list was short: my father's wrenches, the cedar box my grandfather carved in Yuma in 1959, the framed photo of my mother on her wedding day that she insisted I take when I got married because it would make my house lucky. It hadn't, but that wasn't the photo's fault. It looked like fix-it projects I'd avoided, patching the corner where the drywall peeled, replacing the leaky hose on the washer. It looked like cooking for one and figuring out that I could eat eggs for dinner, and no one would call it lazy. It looked like praying without asking for anything, just listening. The Saturday after Romano's, I cleaned the garage. I found the box labeled College, the one with Isabella's textbooks and notes and a photograph of us at 26 and 29, cheeks pink with sun, standing in front of the shed I built and the roses she planted. We looked like people who had never hurt each other. I sat on an overturned bucket for a long time with that version of us in my hands, then put it back in the box and stacked the box on a high shelf I couldn't reach without a step stool. When the server handed Isabella the divorce papers, she called within minutes. "You're really doing this," she said, voice not angry, just wounded. "Yes. Can we talk?" "We did," I said. "At Romano's." A day later, a woman named Mariah called me. "I'm James Rodriguez's ex," she said without introduction. "I heard from a friend what's going on. Be careful." "I am," I said. "Thank you." "He's charming," she said softly, like a confession to herself. "Charming doesn't fix broken." "Neither does lying," I said. She laughed once, sharp and sad. "Good luck, Carlos." The baby arrived in May. The court compelled a DNA test because I was the husband on the birth certificate by default. Patricia filed the motion the day the hospital bracelet cut into my wrist like a tight ring I hadn't asked to wear. Isabella sent a one-line email, "Please don't do this." I didn't answer. 2 swabs and 72 hours later, a lab report with a stamp and a signature said what my gut had shouted the day I held the Planned Parenthood receipt, 0% probability of paternity. Patricia filed an affidavit to amend the birth certificate. The judge, a woman with silver hair and steady eyes, granted it without a lecture and without cruelty. When she looked up at me from the bench, her face changed just enough to tell me she'd seen too many versions of this story, and it never got easier. Isabella didn't fight the divorce after that. She moved to Tucson, took a job waiting tables, posted photos of a smiling baby with cheeks like ripe peaches and captions about sleepless nights. James Rodriguez drifted in and out of those photos, then stopped appearing altogether. A coworker of Isabella's told my sister that he had 2 other women and a string of promises he couldn't pay. I sold the house on Maple Street in October. The roses died that summer because I stopped watering them, part accident, part choice. I told the buyers to pull them out and start fresh. They planted succulents and painted the front door lemon yellow. The house looked happier the day I handed over the keys than it had looked in months. I moved to a smaller place in Scottsdale, nothing fancy, but mine. I put my father's wrenches on a pegboard, set the cedar box on a shelf above my desk, and leaned our wedding photo in the back of a drawer. The mug stayed on top of the fridge where it made less of a statement and more of a shape my hands knew. I kept working at Haller Design. I got promoted to floor manager in December because the previous guy retired and because when things fell apart in my personal life, I didn't let one late order slip. I started taking evening classes at Phoenix Community College, Intro to CAD, then a project management course. On Tuesdays, I ate tacos from the truck parked behind campus and did homework at a sticky table while a group of 20-year-olds argued about whether a rectangle can be a square. I liked the way time felt there, stretched and full. Sundays, I went to my parents' house. My mother overfed me and asked me whether I was sleeping. My father pretended to need help with the broken hinge on a cabinet that wasn't broken. He held the flashlight while I turned the screwdriver like when I was 12. Neither of us said we liked the ritual. We just did it again the next week. In January, Isabella called and I answered out of muscle memory. "I'm sorry," she said before I spoke. "Everything's a mess." He left. "I can't afford daycare. I made a mistake." "I hope you get the help you need," I said. "For your son's sake." "He's beautiful," she whispered, and I heard the smile in her voice that used to unlock something in me and no longer did. "He looks like, not you." "I know. Do you ever?" She stopped. "Never mind. Take care, Isabella." I blocked her number after that. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because some doors only stay shut if you lock them. In March, I ran into her sister Patricia at the grocery store. She hugged me like I was still family. "You look good," she said. "You look lighter." "I'm sleeping," I said. "Turns out that helps." "She's trying," Patricia offered. "It's hard." "I hope it gets easier," I said, and meant it. On the 1-year mark of Romano's, Diego and the second shift crew dragged me out for wings and beer at a place with too many televisions and a trivia night host who thought he was funnier than he was. We shouted wrong answers, laughed until my cheeks hurt, and I realized I hadn't thought of Isabella for 2 whole hours. Healing can be loud. In April, a new engineer joined Haller Design, Maya, smart and precise and not impressed by shop bravado. She asked me why we still did one quality check manually when we could automate it. I told her the truth, because the person who does it has hands that feel errors a sensor misses. She nodded and said, then we keep the hands and program the sensor to teach the next hands. That night, I slept like I hadn't in months. By June, the summer heat had set in. I woke up early, laced my shoes, and ran before the sun turned the sidewalk into a griddle. Running feels like the opposite of drowning. Each footfall said, I'm still here, I'm still here, I'm still here. Sometimes, as I packed my backpack for class or locked up after a late shift, I'd think about that receipt, the thin paper that changed everything. It sits in a folder in my desk, not because I need to punish myself by looking at it, but because it reminds me of a rule I now carry everywhere. When something doesn't add up, trust the math. Don't explain away what the numbers are telling you. Confirm, then act. People ask if I'm angry. I tell them the truth. I'm not anymore. Anger is a tool, not a home. I used it to build the new walls I needed, to hang a door I could lock. Then I put it down. What's left feels better, quiet, sturdy. It's the feeling of a machine after you tune it and the whine disappears and all that remains is a hum you can rest your back against. I don't know what Isabella tells people about why we're not married. I hope she tells herself a version she can live with. I hope the boy grows up knowing someone tells him the truth even when it hurts. I hope he doesn't inherit his father's talent for charming away accountability. None of that is mine to build or fix. What is mine is this: a shop floor that runs clean, a team that trusts me, classes that make my brain ache in a good way, a small place with sunlight on the kitchen floor in the morning, and a life that fits again. If you're waiting for the part where I say I forgave her, it's here, but it might not look like you expect. Forgiveness, for me, wasn't a conversation at a coffee shop or a dramatic speech. It was returning her wedding photo to the drawer and closing it. It was watering the plant on my windowsill after ignoring the dead roses on Maple Street. It was choosing to make dinner at home instead of staring at a stranger's face in a bar and calling it moving on. It was 1,000 tiny decisions that added up to a man I recognized when I brushed my teeth at night. And if you ask what my reward was, I'll show you the cardboard box. It sits in the corner of my garage now, under a pegboard of wrenches and a calendar stuck on the month my life supposedly ended. Inside is a faded photo of a crew around a cake we cut when we crossed 1,000 days without an incident. Next to it is a folded email from a kid named Jason at the plant who wrote, "Thanks for not letting me screw up my marriage the way you could have let me. You told me to tell the truth before I couldn't." I did. And beneath that, a note in my father's handwriting, pulled from an old toolbox the day after he died. Take care of the machine, and it takes care of the man. The marriage was a machine. It needed care we stopped giving it. When I realized I was the only one still tightening bolts, I shut it down before it took my hand. That's not revenge. That's a safety stop. Months after, on a Sunday morning, I brewed coffee and opened the windows. Phoenix air slid in, warm but kind. A text arrived from my sister, "Come over. I made too many enchiladas," as if that were a thing, and I smiled. I laced my shoes. I picked up the mug that says "World's Best Husband" and poured coffee into it anyway, because the mug is just a mug, and names don't curse you. On my way out, I glanced at the folder where the receipt lives and left it closed. Some truths you keep not to relive them, but to respect the person who carried them and didn't fall. I locked the door behind me. The sun was already high, but there was shade on the sidewalk if you knew where to look. I did.